Hello, Eric Beckler with Orgometrics here. Through this COVID-19 crisis, we're going to end up talking with a lot of leaders that are smack dab in the middle of working on maintaining and building alignment to mission and vision as they look at their business models and serve their customer base and constituencies to the best of their ability. Today we have Dr. Michael Thomas, Superintendent of the Colorado Springs School District D11. Dr. Thomas is doing a marvelous job over at Colorado Springs, not only delivering various services to the community, but also looking at how he can go and empower teachers in the community to go and empower the whole student to be able to go and impact the world. So here is my conversation with Dr. Thomas.
Dr. Thomas, thank you very much for taking the time to visit with us today, here to talk about the different work that you and the District 11 Colorado Springs District have been doing regarding distance learning. I really appreciate you taking the time out.
Absolutely.
Hopefully we'll be able to go through just some basic stuff, but could you give the listeners and the viewers here a little idea about yourself, D11, just in general, how long you've been there, the scope of what you're managing there with District 11?
Sure. Well, I'm a Minnesota native, born and raised, and spent my entire career in education in Minnesota. St. Paul, Osseo, and Minneapolis are the three districts I've worked in, and served everything from a school-based social worker all the way to my current role as a school superintendent in Colorado Springs. And I've been here in Colorado Springs. This is year number 2 for me. Had an opportunity to come here to serve in Colorado Springs District 11, and love the opportunity. My wife and family, we've always talked about moving to Colorado, and it was just irony that there was an opportunity that opened up, and my wife's like, "This is too good to be true. We should pursue it." And so came here, and our district, I think when people think about Colorado, it's very similar to Minneapolis, quite frankly. We're actually a little bigger, Colorado Springs, than Minneapolis. Minneapolis is much more dense in terms of population, but our district is roughly 26,000 students, give or take, and that includes some of our district-sponsored charter schools. And we're about 50% students of color and 50% white students. We are the 10th largest in the state of Colorado. I think we are now the second largest district in Colorado Springs proper. I have about 60% or so of my students qualify for free and reduced lunch. And I think I have about 10%, maybe just slightly under 10% of my students qualify for special education. And my gifted and talented is probably around 8%. And our 4-year on-time graduation is probably hovering around 80%. So, we've got a really unique district. I think it kind of is a good microcosm of K-12 across the country. I would say, we've got a lot of opportunity, but we've got a strong foundation to build on. And I think that really is showing itself during these times in terms of what kind of foundation we established when I came in here, 2 years ago.
Marvelous. Thank you very much for that. So, we've been working with Colorado Springs D11 here for a little while now, and you've been doing some marvelous things around establishing kind of a new mission statement, vision, strategic plan, and I'm loving the first few words. It's like, we dare to empower every learner. It's bold, it's aspirational, and I'm curious as to when COVID-19 came through, and then all of a sudden it was, boy, we have to go and crank everything up for distance learning. I would imagine the steps you took were very similar to other districts in terms of getting meals out to, all those
Yeah.
produce lunch folks, getting technology out, things of that nature.
Yeah.
But how did the connection and alignment to your mission vision play itself out as you're going through the few weeks you had before launch of district learning?
Yeah. I'll tell you, when I came into the district, my predecessor was here for just under 10 years or so, and they were a very comfortable district. And when I came in, I really engaged our community around developing a comprehensive strategic plan. We had what was called a superintendent's business plan in the past. Um, when we partnered with Orgametrics and we did our alignment inventory, it was very clear nobody knew anything about the superintendent's business plan, a clear mission, vision, anything for the district. And again, this is not to fault previous administration. There was a time and place for the model that they put into place. But moving forward, we knew that we needed a strong foundation if we were going to be a viable entity in generations to come. And yeah, you stated, when we put together this mission statement with our consulting group, they've never had a district use some of the words that our community chose, and it's "we dare to empower the whole student to profoundly impact our world." And I think just that whole daring piece, you think back to when you were a kid and you double dared or triple dog dared somebody, it
Yeah.
evoked a response in you. And when we talk about daring or empowering the whole student, for us, we think about student in a very broad context, and that's our young people as students, but also the adult learners as students, our staff, our community. We're all learners here in our community, and we recognize that. And so we're always looking to empower one another to be our best. When the COVID crisis hit, I think I said a couple of times that, a crisis doesn't build character, but it highlights the character you have. And that's something that we saw in District 11. Our mission came alive instantaneously. By design, our strategic plan was never designed to be a shelf document. It was a living, breathing way of becoming. And so we've really prided ourselves on falling back on how we're going to empower everyone to make a profound impact during these real challenging times. And it starts with leadership. I've got a great board who pledges 110% of their support to me, but I'm also partnered with the 16 other districts around the Colorado Springs area. So our Pikes Peak region superintendents group, we're real tight, and we make a lot of our decisions for our respective communities together so that we have great alignment from one district to the next, because my neighboring district is literally a stone's throw away. Kind of a weird concept that they have in the Springs, where they have 16 districts that comprise the whole city, unlike like St. Paul or Minneapolis, where it's just one district. But we work real cohesively. And in District 11, we wanted to make sure that we protect the safety of our students as well as our staff in the broader community. So like many districts, we started our spring break a little early. And that gave us a 2-week window that we thought we were going to return. And here we are, almost a month or so later, or actually a little over a month later, and we're still in this distance framework. And when we learned that we're going to be out of physical instruction mode, we had been preparing and building a one-to-one initiative at our secondary already. So that was a blessing for us to be able to have a lot of devices that were accessible to our students. We also then, like you mentioned, that we had to focus on the social emotional well-being of our students first. That was my real clear directive to our staff, is that you have to reestablish what a distance relationship looks like versus one that you can be in contact with every single day. And so all of our staff are making personal phone calls to their students, reestablishing, just the basic needs of, hey, how are you doing? How is your family doing? So that we have the ethic of care driving everything that we're going to be doing, because we have no idea how this is impacting people. But yeah, we successfully launched that about 3 weeks ago, and we have a full-blown virtual-based distance platform. We are also doing hard copy mailing every single week. And then through partnerships with philanthropy, we're building lending libraries that you see across the Twin Cities real prevalently. We're building those for every single one of our school sites. So after we get beyond this crisis, we'll also have these little lending libraries that we can put books in, we can put resource materials in, and we'll continue this distance platform even when we return back to physical instruction, because we know that we've lost about a quarter's worth of instruction. And this summer, you typically have some summer slide, but we're really mindful about what we can do to continue to bridge that summer learning. So we typically had a summer enrichment program. We're reallocating those resources to increasing our platform with the distance learning framework and engaging kids all throughout the summer so that families have access to high quality instruction. And then we're working with our local education commissioner and our governor about next fall. If we're in this mode again next fall, and still a shelter in place or whatever, we know that we'll have perfected that framework to be able to launch in a more comprehensive virtual manner. But if we're coming back into our traditional physical spaces, we know that we're going to have to do a lot of remediation, particularly on those foundational courses such as math or science that builds from one quarter to the next, to ensure that kids are set up for success. So yeah, a lot of work in a very short period of time. And I think all of K-12 across the country experienced that. And I've closed with this. If we don't come out on the backside of this fundamentally different, then we've done something wrong. Far too long we've been in love with the industrial model of education, and it's time that K-12 really looks to be much more responsive and innovative in terms of its approach to meeting the learning needs of our students.
Oh, that's marvelous. You brought in a few different things that if we could delve into a little bit. The first one was social emotional learning, and having each one of your educators contact students directly. Obviously, mode of connection is different, but how do you see similarities with the mentality or philosophy of having the educators be as connected, more connected, maybe a little less connected now with social emotional learning than they were in the face-to-face physical environment?
I think this crisis has really awakened people's understanding of the strong need to focus on social emotional learning, not only for their students, but for themselves or for their own families, for that matter. And everybody connects a little differently, but overall, yeah, I think the number one goal that people agree upon is, before you can move any high quality instruction, whether it's physical or in this distance learning framework, but probably more so now, you have to have that strong connection. I mean, that's John Hattie's research. Teachers are the number one predictor to student success. And if you don't have a good relationship established, you're not going to reach your students. And so more importantly now than ever, we have to understand the social emotional needs of our kids. And this is not just kids, that are, dealing with life challenges or economic challenges. We're talking every single family is touched by this in some form or fashion. So, everything from kids who do struggle with some of those life challenges, but even your solid middle class or upper middle class families, they're really disrupted. And the social connection that kids have are, aside from the Snapchats and TikToks and all those other platforms, kids want to be around their friends, and that's how they, you know, develop and grow. And so when you don't have that physical aspect, it really begins to wear on our young people more than they're ever going to share with us. So you really have to be mindful of looking for those signs. You know, our team, we do mental health Mondays, and we put out um, WebExes and webinars that are pre-recorded. We answer a whole bunch of questions from the community around mental health. We have a whole resource list on our distance learning framework for families to access mental health or social emotional supports. But it's something that our staff recognize that we have to continue to do. You know, I unfortunately lost a student a couple of weeks ago who committed suicide. And it just highlights the fact that many of our young people are dealing with, you know, issues anyways, but then this compounds these, you know, issues of isolation and abandonment and, you know, non-closure. I mean, those are powerful things that kids are trying to make meaning and make sense of. And, you know, in this young person's situation, unfortunately, there's some other things probably that they were dealing with, but this just highlights the fact that we need to be reaching out to our kids and making sure that they feel safe, they feel loved, they feel connected, so that they have confidence and hope that on the backside of this, life's going to be okay.
Yeah, there are two things that, thank you for this. There's two things that run in my head. One, I was reading something on the district administration website, an article by a fellow superintendent that says, I think what we're seeing is that teachers really are less content deliverers than they are kind of human youth development engines. And I'm hacking that last part up to spark that fire within the individual. And that's the second part. You know, I coach basketball at the youth level, you know, generally 6th to 8th grade. And I have that philosophy is, you know, I could teach all the fundamentals of dribbling, passing, shooting, defense, but I need to be able to engage the heart and soul of that player, that feeling valued, they're feeling connected as part of the team. And that if I'm able to stoke that fire inside of them, they're going to be working in the off season that much harder and do things that I wouldn't have the time to do. And they're going to end up growing themselves in ways that I never could have imagined, because all I really kind of did was to start chipping at that marble or molding the clay a little bit and help them see what the possibilities might be in areas where they never thought that they could be. That you just open that up, so I think this disruption has a way of maybe looking at that and seeing where the possibilities might lay.
I think you hit the nail on the head. You know, as part of our strategic plan, we developed a District 11 graduate profile that lays out like 8 critical attributes or characteristics that we want to see in every single one of our students. And I mention this quite frequently during this time. And, you know, 2 that I think really come out or maybe 3, innovative problem solver. So, I mean, what a better way to demonstrate that characteristic than leading or kind of living through a crisis. Healthy and balanced learner. And then lastly is the empathetic collaborator. And those are just 3 of the 8. Because like you said, all the technical aspects of academic instruction, yeah, teachers have that, you know, but it's those deep character traits that are going to make students successful. Very similar to what you see on the court. All the fundamental coaching in the world is great, but if you can't teach character on the court, you know, it's going to fall apart. And that's what we really pride ourselves on in D11 and that's that whole student aspect in our mission. And that's why we created these. And matter of fact, the attributes, the D11 profile, heavily developed by our students. They are the ones who actually develop these profiles. So they know what they want to become successful.
So there's a lot of onus put on to the educators in social emotional learning and continuing to connect with the students. Have there been structures put in place to be able to support the educators, to allow them to be able to learn from their colleagues on certain situations, what's working, what could be enhanced, especially on the social emotional, but maybe even on the broader scale of the technology or curriculum or whatever?
Right. That's a great question. So I actually go back to our orgometrics results. And one of the areas that we were really misaligned in our first year was creativity. And I think that's synonymous with innovation. It's something that K-12 as an industry lacks, I think. But I thought about that heavily in our distance learning framework, and I thought, what's a better way for me to increase creativity than to push autonomy into our staff's hands to develop this distance framework. I did not want our staff to come out with a centralized model to say, thou shalt, engage distantly like this. I have no idea what it's going to take for a teacher to reach their kids in this type of a format, fundamentally different than a classroom. And so in partnership with our union, we really empowered our staff to develop a framework that's very organic. So we had some exemplars or template lessons and those kind of things for every grade level. And we have a central repository of resources. But at the end of the day, our teachers, every single Monday, it's dedicated to PLCs, full days. And then Tuesday through Friday are the instructional times that they have with students. So we've built in a time for staff to collaborate, to think about how they can innovatively and creatively meet the needs and reach every student. And they've really appreciated that. And so it's not perfect because we're building it as we go. But I can tell you our staff are able to upload their ideas. Fourth grade team at School X, they've kind of figured out how to engage learners in a way that is really getting a strong response. Well, they can upload that into the distance learning framework on our intranet site so that every fourth grade teacher can now see, oh, here's an opportunity that I can, possibly implement in my school with our fourth grade team. So going back to what I said earlier, we are creating this framework for a temporary crisis, but the long-term impacts are really going to change how we educate our students in District 11. And this framework is one of them. I guarantee you, I'm going to probably get pushed by my staff to say, Michael, can we keep that 4-day work week deal where we have one full day of planning? And I'll tell you, I think it just shows there are ways that we can support our teachers and allow them to support each other that we're learning through this crisis. Got to find those silver linings throughout this whole, these dark times. And that's something I'm really proud about. I love our staff. I love the creativity that they're demonstrating. And that's something that we took to heart directly from our orgometrics inventory. So how do we capitalize on it? Well, here's a great opportunity to do so.
That's marvelous. Thank you so much for sharing that. So the day worth of collaboration and the teachers really get together, how much is the district office, you and the cabinet, either lurking and just listening and reading and participating and engaging in conversations with them to chronicle or really kind of grasp what this might mean from a broader perspective?
So I would say that, we communicate as a senior team weekly. I communicate with my cabinet weekly, and I communicate with our superintendents every Wednesday at 10 o'clock. So we're constantly communicating at a central admin or administrative level, and then also having direct connections to our principals with our executive directors or associate superintendents or whatever they might be called in respective districts, something similar, each week, so that we get a pulse on what's happening from the front lines on the interactions that are happening with our students, where we might need to support differently or shift resources accordingly. So it's a constant communication chain. I'm in constant communication with our board, probably more so now than in the past. at least 5-6 times a day, I'm talking with our board president, briefing him on everything that we're doing step by step, so that as they get questions from the community, they're able to respond to say, and here's how D11 is responding to whatever the question might be. So I would say regular communication allows us to continue to perfect our distance learning framework and our engagement.
So you mentioned to continue to perfect that. Now, obviously, D11 has very much a learning mindset, a growth mindset, how it's doing its business. And I think any district, any organization for that matter, especially during this time, really needs to look to take that growth mindset, because there's going to be a lot of with coaching, I say either you win and learn, or you learn. The two things to try and keep the scoreboard out of the whole mix.
Right.
What during these 2+ weeks are you seeing that y'all tried and said, you know what, wow, we have the opportunity to really improve that? And then if so, what types of things have been done, and what have been the impacts of those modifications in this time?
Yeah, I similar to you, I always tell people, be open to outcome, not wedded to it. Because the outcomes could possibly change based upon your learning through process. And, one of the things that we learned is that this situation, the COVID situation, has really amplified, I think, a lot of inequities in the social aspect of things. So it showed how many families don't have access to technology, don't have access to proper Wi-Fi, who depend on schools heavily, more than just academics, but for nutritional meals. And with grocery shortages, it's not just free and reduced lunch families, it's every family who can't get some of the basic supplies to feed their families. So we learned very quickly that our supports for families, you can't presume who you think is needing the supports that we have to deliver. And that was a big aha moment for us. So when we did our meal delivery, it wasn't just in our economically challenged area of the city, it's literally across the entire city. And we have, cars for blocks in some of our very solid middle class neighborhoods coming in for lunches. You would have never suspected that would be a need. So that was one thing. I think the other thing for us was really having to be creative on how we could get physical material to families that didn't have access. We worked as much as we could to try to bridge the digital divide with deploying devices and trying to obviously partner with Xfinity and other partners to provide free to low cost Wi-Fi packages. But we still have a delta that we're not going to be able to close by the end of, we're done in mid-May here in Colorado. So we're not going to, even if we got devices, I wouldn't have enough time for my teams to image these devices, put all the security systems on there, and then deploy them to our families. We'd be done with school by that time. So we had to be creative on how we reach families in ways that didn't have access to that technology. We landed on a direct mail methodology. It's a costly way, but we explored a variety of different methodologies that would get materials into the hands of our students. And this is the best way. But one of the things that we found is that this is something that was really creative. We increased the Wi-Fi radius of all of our schools so that we could cast into our parking lots. And there are some areas that their reception is so powerful that you could live across the street or a block away and you're getting Wi-Fi access from our school. That way families could walk or drive to our parking lots, stay distanced safely, and access free Wi-Fi, because many of our families that we found in our survey had access to some technology, whether it's a phone or an iPad or something like that. So you could at least download what you need and then go back to your house and then print off things if you needed to do that. So that was a unique thing that we learned. And then, partly on the front side, we wanted to focus heavily on academics. And we actually were feeling the pushback from our staff because they themselves weren't ready to adjust their own families in response to what was happening with COVID, to just jump into teaching as normal. And so, I talked about our focus on SEL, and it's great, but it didn't come right off the bat. We just immediately went, okay, we got to teach. And we went into this traditional mindset. And, many of us, or I'd say many of us, but there were several of us that said, hey, you know what, if you remember, in our strategic plan, we talk about our strategic delimiters, and it's something that we decided that we would put in there, and we actually published those. And I don't have it memorized. I'm just going to pull this real quickly. One of our strategic delimiters says we will not allow past practices to create barriers to new and innovative ideas.
Wow.
And it was just one of those moments where somebody brought the strategic plan forward and said, hey, Michael, you know what? We're going into our historical traditional way of doing things. That's not going to solve our problems right now. And so that's how we got into that emphasis of SEL, because we freed ourselves from what we are so used to and comfortable doing, to break out of that comfort zone and really be more responsive to the needs of our staff and our students and our families. So those are a couple of things for us that we engaged in and learned fairly quickly, like, wow, that was the wrong approach. And then to be humble enough to say, and we've got to change that. We can't continue to do that. So yeah, I'm hopeful that that will continue as we emerge on the backside of this COVID situation.
Boy, that story really kind of blows my mind. The aspect that you look specifically at the plan about strategic delimiters,
Yeah.
and recognize that you were limiting yourselves.
Yeah.
Through this, because when stress comes, you try and circle the wagons or whatever and go, but the situation, the circumstances, the setting have changed to such a degree that what you knew wasn't going to be serving the purpose.
Didn't matter. Yeah, that's right.
To empower every student.
That's right.
So that's marvelous, in how the direct connection was there. One question before I kind of get to the final stuff. I was reading the Minneapolis Star Tribune yesterday, had an excellent article that highlighted one specific Somali family and the difficulties of being able to go and deliver this content, not only electronically, but the way that parents can go and assist their students when they don't speak English. And, the main one who does, parent who does speak a little bit of English, but is the only one working, fearful of losing their job.
Sure.
And providing the resources from, translators and printed materials and things of that nature. I would imagine that Colorado Springs has an aspect of multiple languages in trying to support parents and families in their effort to be able to go and teach students. I was wondering if you're facing similar issues.
Yeah, we are, with 50% of our students being students of color, and our highest demographic of non-English speaking families is Spanish. So on our distance learning website, we actually have a whole tab for culturally and linguistically diverse learners. And in that, we have breakout sections for reaching the needs of EL. We have language scaffolding strategies. We have access to Rosetta Stone, iReady, Imagine Learning, a variety of resources that our families can tap into to help bridge some of those linguistic barriers. Clearly not as linguistically diverse as a Minneapolis district, but we do recognize that need. And so all of our modules are translated for both English and Spanish as our dominant language.
Wow, yeah. And I had a feeling that you were going to be mostly on the Spanish side. I
Hmm.
was curious as to whether a lot of the content was going to be in Spanish to be able to
Yep.
drive that.
Yep.
Um, you mentioned a little bit of summer slide and maybe some additional time needed. I was curious, are you going to be able to get families interested in being involved in some distant learning during the summertime as well?
Yeah.
Conversation
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah, I will say, we're in the planning mode for that right now. And, our governor is not mandating any kind of summer school, nor is our commissioner, but we want to just have the resources accessible. And if we can reallocate resources that we're currently not spending to supporting a summer bridging framework, very similar to our distance learning framework, then that's what our plans are. And if we have any ability to have a reprieve from the shelters in places and those kind of things, or the stay at home orders that will allow some type of physical contact to do maybe some small group intervention support for kids who might be off track, and our secondary students, particularly our high school students who might need, 2 or 3 credits to recover, to graduate on time. We will definitely be putting together a plan so that that can happen. It's just a matter of reallocating our resources and offering that to our families. But we can't force them because we're
Right.
out of school, so to speak. But it's a resource now that for years to come, we can always offer it because it's now we've perfected that framework, is what I'm saying. So I think the silver lining for us is we're not relegated to classroom instruction only, and learning literally can occur 24 hours a day as long as we provide the resource and materials for families. If they choose to enhance themselves or get some of that remediation support themselves, it's right there for you at your fingertips. And I'm also hopeful that the digital divide that's been amplified throughout this process, that communities begin to find ways that they can bring Wi-Fi access to every home, because this just shows that if you're not connected in this virtual space, you literally will miss out on lots of things. Everything is moving in that direction, and many of our families are being left behind, and that's obviously bigger than District 11. But I'm just hopeful again that our community partners or philanthropy, will be able to help bridge some of those gaps, that exist.
Right, Marla. Are you going to be looking to do kind of some quote unquote standardized testing to identify ones that are going to be below grade level, or is the platform that you're using in of itself going to identify those ones that might be in need of some remediation interventions,
Mhm.
things of that nature?
Yeah, so like most states, our state has waived all the standardized testing, but locally we have our own aligned district benchmarks, our own formative assessments that, yeah, teachers will issue to students just to see, are you on track? And if not, how far off track are you? So that as a third grade teacher, for example, when that student moves on to fourth grade, that data can then be shared with that fourth grade teacher to say, here's where we believe, Michael's going to need some skill filling. Okay. So we'll have those internal measures that our staff are doing on a formative basis.
Cool. One last question, if I could, Dr. Thomas, and then on your way doing your work. You mentioned how through this, the model of the way education is going to be delivered, and and is this is kind of, like to use the word catalyst opposed to disruptor sometimes, but the catalyst on how the business model will be changing in this initial time. And obviously there's more thought, and there'll be some coalescing on some things. As of this moment, how do you see actually that business model changing? What can you honestly foresee maybe next year of how learning, if we're all back in school in physical settings, how that might actually look next year?
One of the things, that's a great question as well. I think one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot is our high school models. Our high schools operate as very separate entities in every district that I've been in. And if you understand scheduling at the secondary level, I mean, it's a nightmare to try to match not only just your core classes, but then all the electives that students are signing up for. And, you might have 10 students who want to take, Chinese. Well, financially, you can't staff a class with 10 students. And in the past, we would have to say, sorry, we can't do that. We're going to not be able to offer that elective. We're going to have to fold you into French or German or Spanish or something else. Well, that's not what they wanted. They wanted Chinese or Mandarin or whatever. So now I have the ability through a distance learning framework that I can staff those 10 students, at school A with maybe a paraprofessional that can provide adult supervision. But then those students are virtually enrolled in high school B, where there's a class of 25 kids that are taking Mandarin, and they are able to connect that way. And then obviously secondary students, we can look at shuttles, or if they can drive, to have some FaceTime with the teacher. But this whole distance learning piece allows kids to really stay enrolled at their home high school, but have access to learning in electives that we just can't financially afford to put at every single one of our schools. So that's one of the things I've been thinking about that I think is going to be a great opportunity for us, or as you say, it's a catalyst for scheduling change that allows kids greater access to coursework that they strongly desire.
And as I've been talking with different school leaders and teachers, it seems like there might be even a cause for in the classroom. The structure may end up being different, that there's a lot of these modules that have been created that might fit for various students, may not fit for some others, but instead of filling the whole, 50 minutes or whatever the time is with lecture and doing all this stuff, that there's going to be an opportunity to mix those platforms together, and that the educator becomes a bit more of that connector with the student and finding out what's going on and helping them go at their pace and find their path, as opposed to just filling the time to fill the time.
You literally are saying the exact words of our union president. He's a linguist by training, and so he's in love with Plato and Socrates and all those folks. But so he's used this analogy of Plato and Socrates sitting under the tree and students coming to them when they need resource. You truly are a resource versus a distributor of information. Yes, you will impart from time to time, but to your point, a teacher with technology can really, launch a strong, comprehensive lesson, and then with supportive technology, allow students to self-pace their learning and guide their learning. And then that teacher is now available on a more readily basis for that one-to-one or small group, support, where kids need to just check in. And, I can't remember the name of the school, but there's a school here locally in a neighboring district where the teachers are on the periphery. It's like a big circle, and the offices are all right there, and the student are all at the center, and they have constant eyes on classrooms. It's multidisciplinary. It's not just one content area, and doesn't matter what students are working on, but they'll just leave the center of the circle, go get support on social studies, go back, do that. Maybe now they need help with ELA. They can walk across to the ELA. Everything that they need is right there in the center, and the support surrounds them. It's a phenomenal model. And here again is a very innovative approach to breaking out of our neat little 40 by 40 box classrooms with rows of desks. We're buying furniture right now for all of our kindergarten stuff, and furniture is not just buying a desk and a chair. We're looking at the instructional technology of furniture, how small tables can pull together for groups, or how we can have core balls versus chairs, and all these different things. It's not the same as when you and I were growing up. and our learners are demanding, us to be more responsive to that. I remember my kids putting on headphones, listening to music all the time while they're doing math. And again, my kids are academically great students. And I remember getting after them like, you're not doing homework. You're sitting here listening to your beats. And I finally gave up the fight because that music or whatever they were doing actually supported their learning style. And I just let it go. And, my kids are highly successful. But
I was the same way when I was learning too. I always had some music going on, and but I'm kind of, going a little listen to some Prince or whatever it happens to be. And then, then you connect back in and take your breaks and stuff. So
right. Totally. So we're excited in District 11. We're real concerned, in the short term about the health and safety of our students and our family and the broader community. But at the backside of this, as I share with my staff, we will emerge as a stronger D11 and in a more innovative D11. And we're looking forward to getting back with our kids. We miss them. We're part of the Monday Night Lights initiative that's happening across the country. We do it, every Monday. And, I can't wait to get on the backside so that we can demonstrate, our creativity, our innovation, and our level of responsiveness and connection with our kids again.
I think that's a great place for us to be able to unstop. Dr. Thomas, thank you so much for taking the time to visit with me and with everybody that will be watching.
Absolutely.
We're so happy to be a part of your experience, your journey on alignment, and we're so looking forward to seeing where it will go after this.
Absolutely. Well, we're looking forward to it as well. And you all take care and see you on the backside.
All right. Cheers.
All right. Take care.